Alright, this video is going to get me a lot of enemies in the language learning community because I'm about to say some blasphemy that goes against everything they believe. You all know that I am a big fan of learning languages, and I have my reasons for that. But there are also legitimately some very valid reasons to not learn languages. And if you do want to encourage people to learn a new language, you can't just sweep these issues under the rug or pretend that they're not real issues. You have to have an answer for all of them. So at least hear me out. The fact is that there are plenty of monolingual people in the world who live very fulfilling and happy lives, and they don't feel any great void in their life left by the lack of a second or third language. So with all that said, I give you 7 reasons you should not learn a new language. The first one is the simplest, and is just the very simple fact that learning a language is hard. This probably comes as no surprise to you. If you're gonna learn a new language, it takes lots of time. It might take lots of money. It takes lots of effort. It's very frustrating, and it's no small endeavor. You can't just do it over the weekend. It takes a long commitment, and it's difficult. Something that you might not want to engage in unless you have a very motivating reason to do so. The second reason to not learn a language, or at least to not learn a new language, is you haven't learned your last language yet. Now, I don't judge anyone in the language learning community based off of how many languages they're learning, but there are some factors that you need to consider before you start learning a new language. And I see a lot of people start learning Bulgarian one week, and then they start learning Icelandic the next week, and then they're learning Croatian and Serbian and Urdu and Cherokee, and they haven't learned any language. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. But you have to ask yourself what your goals are. Why am I learning these new languages? If you just like the language and you have no intention of going to Bulgaria or Iceland or Croatia, but you just want to learn it because that's what you do for fun, cool. But I get the feeling that a lot of us actually want to become proficient in the languages that we're learning. And before you start learning a new language, you should ask yourself what your goals are. And if you want to actually become proficient in the languages that you're learning, then you are just going to have to put off learning new ones, no matter how tempting it might be. Now, if you just want to get a broad knowledge on a wide spectrum of languages, then by all means go for it. It's not wrong, but you have to be intentional about what your goals are. Third reason to not learn a new language. You might just not be interested in languages. I don't have a particularly strong interest in playing video games. I used to when I was in high school. I enjoy it every once in a while, but I don't feel strongly motivated to spend lots of time playing video games. That doesn't mean I judge people who do so. It just means I don't feel a strong compulsion to spend lots of time doing that. Thinking about this from the other direction, there are just people who don't want to spend a lot of time learning a language. They're just not really interested in it. It's not something that they find entertaining. They don't find it intriguing, and that's okay. For someone like me, I have a strong and compelling reason to learn the Thai language because I'm surrounded by it. But if you're not in a situation like that and you don't feel any strong need to do so, then you might not want to start this endeavor that's going to take lots of time and money and energy and give you lots of gray hairs unless you have a really strong reason to do it. Fourth reason to not learn a new language. And this is the reason that I know is going to piss people off. This is the one that is going to make me lots of enemies in the language learning community. But it's a valid issue, and if you're going to try to encourage people to learn a new language, you have to deal with this, and you have to have a good reason that you think they should overcome this issue. Pretty much anywhere you go in the world, you will be able to get by with English. And I know this is just the most cringeworthy thing for some of you people to hear, but it's true. I live in Thailand, in an area outside of Bangkok, and I live in an area where there's actually not that many people that speak English, or their English is pretty shoddy. And probably 90% of my coworkers speak no Thai. They speak only English, and they get by just fine. I mean, they don't feel any compelling reason to go through tons of hours and tons of stress and frustration to learn this language when they get by just fine learning English. And there has to be exceptions to this rule, but pretty much everywhere I've traveled in the world, and I've gone to lots of different places, you can usually get by with just English. You're surrounded by it. Even here in Thailand, everywhere I go, I'm seeing English signs. They have English menus. Airplanes have the language of the country that they're flying to, as well as English, even if they're not flying to or from an English-speaking country. Generally speaking, you'll be able to get by using English. This is another one that will be very contentious. Computer translation is getting better. Now, it's definitely not there yet, okay? But you can't deny that Google Translate is getting pretty good for most everyday uses. Now, you don't want to use it for professional uses. There are just some very funny errors that we're all aware of that Google Translate and other machine translators will make. I've had lots of experiences, especially here in Thailand, where people rely on Google Translate to get the job done. Lots of people have come up to me when they see I'm white and they just assume I don't speak any Thai. Lots of like employees in stores and restaurants and stuff will come up to me and they'll just show me their phone. They'll show me what they typed in Thai, and they'll show me the translation, and I can generally understand. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be pretty, but you'll at least be able to understand what is going on 95% of the time. Doesn't always work, but like I said, it's getting better. And I fully believe that computer translation will come pretty close to human translators sometime in the future, and probably within my lifetime. Sixth reason to not learn a new language. There's relatively little need for many people to learn a new language. All right, of course, this will vary depending on where you live and who you are and the job that you work and the people that you surround yourself by. But it's a fact that unless you're actively seeking out opportunities to use the language, most people, at least where I'm from, most people don't often run into times where they need to speak another language. It's just not a necessity. You might take an occasional vacation overseas if you have the money to do so. You might occasionally run into a person in your city who doesn't speak your language. Now, if you live in a big city, this will happen a lot more often. At least where I'm from, you very rarely run into someone who doesn't speak English. And you might, on occasion, go to a restaurant of a certain ethnicity where some of the employees don't speak English. But for most of us, these occasional occurrences where you might run into someone who doesn't speak English are not enough to justify hundreds or thousands of hours of studying. Now, taking a vacation to Costa Rica is a good justification for spending a couple weeks on Duolingo beforehand. But by itself, these, for many people, are not going to be enough of a reason to justify the large commitment that is learning a language. Of course, there are other reasons to learn languages, but this alone, the possibility of running into a situation where you need the language, it's not going to tip the scales for most people. And number 7, probably the strongest reason that I can think of for not learning a language, you have better things to do. Like I said in the very first reason that I gave in this video, learning a language is hard and it takes a lot of time and it's a commitment. And every hour you spend learning a language is an hour that you have to take away from doing something else. For me, I'm so busy with all the different things that I want to do, I struggle finding time to study languages and to fit everything else that I want to do into my schedule. There are plenty of things that I would love to start doing, plenty of hobbies I would like to take up, plenty of skills I would like to learn that I just can't because there's other things that are more important to me. And you have to make a value judgment for yourself. You can't fit everything into your schedule. You make time for the things that are priority, and the other things you just have to let go. If you don't have a strong and compelling reason to learn a language, you still might want to do it for fun, but it's very reasonable for other things to be in your life that just take a higher priority. And I'm not going to judge anyone for making that value judgment for themselves. So there's my 7 reasons that you might not want to learn a language. Now, of course, you probably all know the conclusion that I've come to. None of these reasons are compelling enough to stop me from learning languages. But every person has to make this decision for themselves. There are plenty of people who live their whole life without learning another language and die happy. And they don't feel like the one thing they were missing was another language. So I would like to move past some of the stigma, at least in the language learning in the polyglot community, against monoglots. Like they're just lazy or they just don't care about other cultures enough. These are some very valid reasons that people might not want to learn another language, and I'm not going to judge them for that. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.